Content warning. There is some graphic, but toned down description of injuries to multiple animals. This particular event happened maybe a week after I finished my bachelor's degree some years ago, but it has lingered with me. A woman calls the clinic, sounding very calm, and the receptionist taking the call hands me the phone so I can triage and establish urgency and get things ready. Karen, I have a breeding pair of guinea pigs that got into a bit of a scuffle, and there's some scratches that need a bit of attention. Can I bring them in? Me. Absolutely. Can you describe the injuries so I can either schedule a time later this afternoon or get you squeezed in as an emergency? Her. There is a lengthy pause. Me. Can you see them now? Her. Yes. Me. Okay. Are they both breathing? Her. Yes. Me. Can you please describe the injuries? Scratches can look minor but be worse than they appear, and even minor scratches will require precautionary antibiotics. Her. Well, the male has the scratches to the face and front legs area. The female has some scratches to the abdomen which are bleeding a bit, probably just require a clean and stitches. Me. Okay. Well, it sounds pretty important we see them relatively soon. Can you be here within an hour? Her. Yeah, I'm only a few minutes away. Me. Great. When you get to the clinic, give the receptionist your name and mention that Katie Mouse triaged your pets over the phone. They'll come get me so that I can evaluate the situation and get one of the vets to give the instructions for me to go through wound care, and they'll get antibiotics ready. This seemed pretty run-of-the-mill. No alarm bells ringing. Boy, was I in for a rude shock when our Karen makes her entrance. To her credit, she did arrive within 20 minutes, but her description of what the wounds were on the female were so very, very downplayed. She gave me the male first, and his scratches were pretty superficial, though one would require stitches as it exposed muscle on his shoulder. I called the boss dude in to start working on the male quickly so that I could triage the female. Admittedly, I made a mistake not checking the female first. The male was making it difficult to get to the female, and I wanted to get him out of the way to then get to the female. She was under a lot of blood-stained paper and cloth. This is when alarm bells started. I moved the paper and cloth, and the wounds described as superficial were actually fatal. Her torso was absolutely shredded and internal organs were spilling out. There were lacerations to internals as well, and making it worse, the wood chips she used in their cage were all through the innards that were now exposed. My blood begins to boil, but I need to keep my cool. I take a breath. Boss dude looks at me and knows something is very wrong. Me. You said that her wounds were minor and would just need a clean and maybe some stitches? Boss dude peers into the carrier and starts turning red, then returns to patching up the male, knowing what I'll be saying next. Her. Well, I didn't want to be judged over the phone. Judgmental people are the worst. Me. These wounds are in no way minor. There is literally nothing we can do to save her. Her. Sure you can. Just give things a clean, stitch her up, give her antibiotics, and send her home. She'll be fine. Me. No, that's not how it's going to work. She's got irreparable damage and has lost an enormous amount of blood. We don't have guinea pig blood transfusions on hand, even if we were able to fix her extremely bloody, serious injuries. I'm sorry, but this will need to be a euthanasia case. Her. No. She needs to be patched up so I can get her breeding again. Me. Absolutely not. Even if we could just patch her up, she would never be able to breed again because her uterus is so damaged that a pregnancy would likely kill her from a rupture. Her. You don't get it. I need her patched up so that she can breed. I need to make money somehow. Me. A few dollars is more important than the welfare of your animals? That's horrendous. There's absolutely nothing we can do except euthanize her, because right now she is suffering. No. You're not euthanizing her. I refuse. Boss dude. Miss Karen, if you do not give us the permission to euthanize her, I will be forced to go over your head and get permission from animal welfare authorities. Her. I highly doubt that's even a thing. Don't threaten me again. I'll call the police and take you to court for animal abuse. Me. I'm sorry. What? You want to have us charged with animal abuse for euthanizing an animal that cannot be saved? Boss dude puts the male in a cardboard carrier and calls RSPCA. Her. You. I'm calling the police. You're awful people. Sure enough, she calls the emergency number rather than the local police station and makes a whole lot of wildly false accusations. It only takes a few minutes for the boss dude to get the authority. He's measuring up the barbiturates when police arrive. We have to stop what we're doing and show them the notes taken from her original call when I told her to come in. Look at the state of the female. One of the officers threw up and the other wasn't looking so well either. The officer not puking calls RSPCA to confirm the authority given and match up a code boss dude put in the file notes before measuring up the barbiturates. It all checks out. They remove her from the consult room. We administer the barbiturates, clean up the female so that she's easy for the star of this story to bury, and give Karen the male and the body of the female in separate cardboard carriers. Police stick around to make sure she pays, all while she's hurling abuse at us. You'd think this would be the end of the story. You'd be wrong. Less than 48 hours later, she shows up without calling with a very poorly large pet snake. I'm standing there absolutely stunned and thinking, oh, there is no way you've done what I think you've done. I thought wrong. This absolute monstrosity of a human thought, it would be a brilliant idea to feed the barbiturate-filled deceased female guinea pig to her snake because, in her words, it was easier than waiting for a rabbit to thaw, and the smell of blood would appeal to the snake. He can be a picky eater. This snake was digesting a guinea pig full of barbiturates. She fed what is essentially death potion to her snake. We check the vitals and do some imaging to see if there's any chance we can save this snake, and one of the other nursing staff contacts RSPC, knowing that all hell is about to break loose. Once again, there is nothing we can do. Once again, we have to euthanize one of her animals because of her stupidity. Once again, she refuses to give the permission to euthanize. Once again, she calls the police on the emergency number. Once again, we receive the authority from RSPCA to euthanize. Once again, we need to delay when police arrive. It's the same police attending. They check the notes and authority, give us the go-ahead, drag her into the reception area, as she once again hurls abuse and refuses to pay. One of the officers contacts the RSPC to see if there's reason enough to arrest her for animal abuse. And there's a long pattern of her showing up to clinics with animals in horrendous states, almost always requiring euthanasia. She left the clinic in cuffs. A few months later, we were summoned to give testimony in court. The only good thing about this fiasco is that she had the proverbial book thrown at her, as this was not even her first time in court for animal neglect and abuse. She received a few months' custodial sentence, was fined a significant amount which would be donated to an animal rescue organization, and had a legal ban on owning animals, which meant all her animals were seized and the healthy few were rehomed. Majority were not able to be saved, and to this day, RSPC, do random checks to make sure she has no animals. So I finally met one in the wild, the infamous Karen, and I couldn't help but laugh so hard at this lady, only angering her more. Today I was shopping for my family at the Midwest's best grocery chain M, something that I dislike on Sundays as it is a madhouse, and therefore I usually order my groceries if I procrastinate until Sunday, but I needed a little break from my amazing family after so much togetherness over the last few days. We buried my dear mother-in-law Friday after an aneurysm that shocked us all. Like I said, I needed a break even though I am on chemo, and took it yesterday. I do Saturday, so I don't miss work, and so my students don't see their teacher looking deathly ill. I digress. Back to the story. As I mentioned earlier, I dislike shopping on Sundays, but here I was ready to tackle the crowds with my on-a-mission stare and one headphone and listening to a book, the other dangling out so people could not only see I was listening to something and therefore not approach me, but also know that I could hear them if I was in the way or something. The Big Red M has products in the front of the store, and their employees wear blue-collared shirts with khakis or black pants, or a blue apron with khakis or black pants and always closed-toed shoes. Oh, and a visor or ball cap. Today I'm sporting a navy shirt with red, purple, and light blue flowers, jeans rolled up to just above my ankles, platform sandals, and my pink sunglasses on top of my head. I look nothing like their wonderful employees, and since I'm pushing a blue shopping cart and looking at produce, minding my own business when Karen first makes her appearance. Karen clears her throat. I move to the side, assuming she also wants to look at the blackberries in sale 5 for $5. My book is getting interesting, so I don't pay her much mind. Karen, then clears her throat again. Excuse me. Me. I am sorry. I'm almost done. Midwestern manners kick in, and I hurry up. Karen, exasperated. I said, excuse me. Me. Sorry. I'm sure I looked as thoroughly confused as I was at this point since I had only taken a quick moment to get my 5 pints. Karen. Are you done yet? Mind you, I'm walking away with my cart at this point, so yeah, I'm done, dummy. Me. All yours. They all look good. It's a good price, huh? Karen. Yeah, but I want the ones you got since it looks like you got the best ones. Me. I think they all look good. Sorry. I turn to leave and go to the Nana's. Karen. Well, that was rude, she says loudly and at no one particular. I keep shopping, laughing at how I've just encountered a Karen of sorts, but thankfully made it out unscathed. Or so I thought. Next up is the bakery department. I'm picking up some sweets for my boys, 4 and 6, and my husband for breakfast since my husband is in mourning and will be taking the boys into school, leaving me to get some grading done before my students get to my school. Karen re-entered the picture just as I picked up a 40% off package of donuts. Score, Karen. I was going to get those. Mind you, I had them in my cart before she was in the area. Me, okay? Well, that stinks. I think, oh, here we go again. Karen, it's not fair. You are taking all of the good stuff for yourself. Me. Well, I guess get ahead of me then. Karen, no. You need to share with the other customers. Me. I believe store has a first come, first serve policy, but whatever. Karen, customers should not have to wait for you to get their stuff. Me. Still not realizing that she thinks I work here. Whatever, hun. I don't have to cater to you. I walk away with my donuts. Karen. I said I wanted those. I am ignoring her and walking away. Karen was not at all happy about this. Karen. Give me those cookies. Me. They're donuts. And no. Karen. You can't just take what you want. Give them. Me. Still walking away. I got them first. And it looks like I can and did. Toodles. Toodles. Big grin on my face. I went up and down the frozen aisle quickly as all I was getting was popsicles for my boys. I'm in the fish department, which also hosts bacon for some reason. When Karen makes her way to me again, she says to some innocent older lady, "Don't you hate when entitled brat employees take things and hide them for themselves?" The lady nervously smiles at her as she continues. They think they are special, and they ignore the paying customers. I actually laugh hard at her nonsense and respond as the lady and Karen are blocking my path. I always assume that they are not working, on break or something. I've not worked retail in many years, but I think everyone should at some point, as it helps one appreciate how difficult it can be. The innocent lady smiles at me and says, "You're so right." This enraged Karen, but she's yet to go off, so I keep shopping. I'm looking at the wine selection, trying to figure out if I want to get another bottle or actually drink what I have at home when again Psycho Karen approaches. I naively thought maybe she heard me when I said I don't work in retail. Nope. Karen, I suppose you're going to get some wine too? Me. Nope. I'm going to drink what I have at home. But this is good if you are wanting a decent bottle. Karen, I should have known you're an alcoholic. Me, laughing, what? Karen, an employee who uses their discount to get some cheap wine. You are sad? Me. Actually, you, my dear, are the sad one. And I don't work here, so please leave me alone. I'm done with your entitled behavior. Karen rips my headphone out of my ear. It's a cheap pair, but still. Karen, how rude. Take those out. Me. Excuse me. Do not touch me again, lady. Karen, I've had about enough of you and your sad alcoholism. Me. That's funny. I've had about enough of you and your abusive behavior. And for the record, I drink about once every few days. A glass at most to unwind from my not here position. I know that I worded this poorly. Karen, do not lie to me. I know you work here. Me. No, but I shop here regularly. So maybe you've seen me here. I've never worked for M. I know for a fact that no employee looks remotely like me. Karen. Yes, you do. You're wearing their colors, even me. So, because I'm wearing a different blue with red flowers, I work here? Karen. You? Yes, she said not the actual word. Work here? Me. Laughing hysterically at my Karen and the wild catch. Yeah, okay, lady. Karen. Wait here. I'm getting your manager and you'll be sorry. Oh. And she reaches into my cart and takes my donuts. I laugh and take them back. Karen, red in the face. Management? Manager? 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 I walk away, and surprisingly, 2 other customers come up to me. Customer 1. What the heck was that lady's problem with you? Me. I don't know. I guess she thinks that I work here and employees must bow down to her. Customer 2. You handled her so well, I would have been frantic. Customer 1. I know you from somewhere. Are you my kid's teacher? Me. I am a teacher who is your kiddo. Customer 1, says the kid's name. Me, laughing. Yup, how's this project going? We chat and then go back to shopping because we hear Karen still hollering about needing a manager, and none of us wanted to deal with her brand of crazy. I head to the other non-grocery side of the Megamart, get what I need, and head to the checkout feeling grateful that I managed to get what I needed without further incident. Or so I thought. I'm standing in line, cart full, when I hear the voice of Karen. Karen, let me in front of you. I already reported you to your manager, and she said she'll talk to you later. Employees should go after customers, hands on hips, expectantly. Me, I don't know who you talk to, but again, I don't work here. I have waited for 2 other customers to get through the line beforehand, and while I appreciate your cart has less than mine, I don't think I'll offer you anything since you have been insufferably narcissistic and have displayed downright disgusting behavior. Karen, that's it. The nasty woman hit me. She actually hit me with her cart. I'm getting your manager. You'll be sorry. She took off yelling again as I began to unload my cart. I'm pale in the face because today is the day after my chemotherapy treatment, and I am so not happy with this lady and her nasty attitude. Normally, I would have let someone with a few small items go ahead of me, but not today, as I just want to get home and get to bed. I'm lucky enough my chemotherapy doesn't render me bedridden like it does many people, but I don't exactly feel great. The kind employee notices my sheet-white appearance and asks me if I need assistance and said that they'd already called the manager after the incident with the lady. And normally I would say no thank you, but I take him up on his offer and sit in the blue benches in front of his lane while he and another employee unload and reload my cart. They even put in my perks code for me. This store really is the best. The manager comes up as I'm getting up to pay. Karen in tow. Manager. Is this the lady you're talking about? Karen. Yes. She's still here. Now take care of her. She was so rude and she took all the good things. I bet she steals too. Manager is perplexed. She isn't an employee. She shops here often, ma'am, so maybe you've seen her? Karen. You're telling me she doesn't work here? I do not understand why you are covering for her. She stole from my cart. Customer one, who I think was waiting around for Karen, is in line and says loudly, you stole from her cart. She just took it back. Karen. Well, employees should not get the discounted things. Manager. Ma'am, employees are allowed to buy whatever they please. And again, I'm sorry, she doesn't work here. Karen. She's a thief. Me. Please, just let me be. I'm feeling quite ill. But if you need to look at a video or something, I'll wait. But can you please put up my frozen popsicles? Employee who saw her hit me. Manager, I think you should look at the video in my lane too. Karen, I did nothing wrong. Manager, no one said you did. He raises an eyebrow. Some other employee came out. I think he was store security. He says, so manager, I think you'll find the lady in pink was repeatedly harassing the lady in blue and even hit her. Turns to me. We can produce video if you want to press charges. Me, I just want to get home. I think I'm going to be sick. Karen, call the cops. They'll see she's a thief. Me, okay, I'm so over you, lady. I will gladly wait for police to arrive and I'll press charges as you have harassed me repeatedly, attempted to damage my headphones, and hit me. I have never stolen anything in my life, except a piece of candy when I was 5, and I felt so guilty about it that I went back and tattled on myself and paid for it. Manager, let's calm down. Karen, liar, you stole my donuts? Me, very calmly and sweet as can be. No, I merely took back my donuts that you took out of my cart. Employee, let's review the tapes. Me, gladly, but can I please sit? I'm really not feeling well. Karen, faker. They called the police and the police officer reviewed the tapes as Karen sat there smugly with a poop-eating grin, expecting vindication. Police officer asks for our statements. Karen jumps in first. I'm visibly sick at this point, and the officer asks me if I'm okay. I tell him I'm in chemotherapy and I don't feel good. This seems to anger Karen, who begins yelling at me as it is now my turn to speak. The officer asks her to shut up. She doesn't, so he handcuffed her and said she was going to be charged with disrupting the peace, regardless of whether I wanted to press charges against her for harassment and repeated assault amongst other things. She went more pale than me, which is saying something. The manager gave me a gift card for my troubles and said with a wink in her eye if I ever wanted a job, I could have one. I did press charges, which I would have dropped. But since she made me throw up in public, I wanted her to be humiliated too. I plan on using my gift card for some classroom items, tissues and hand sanitizer, and food for my homeless students. I told the manager I didn't need the gift card, but she insisted. And when I told her what I'm using it for, the $20 became $100. My students are going to have food for the weekends for several weeks. Thank you, Karen and M. Thrifty Acres. This is an ancient tale of mine, but it crossed my mind this morning and felt this community might appreciate my youthful, jerky decision-making. I'm currently 31, but it all started when I was 20-ish. There was a horrific, traumatic loss in my life. As I was down spiraling in grief, I moved in with my older cousin Amy, who I had generally always been close with. She had a munchkin who was almost 1 at the time. I ended up living with them for about 3 years until the night it all fell apart. At the time it all unraveled, I worked midnights. I would keep my midnight sleep schedule during the week, but would flop to a normal sleep schedule on weekends so I could spend as much time with my BF as possible, as he had to drive an hour, one way, just to visit weekly. Pure chaos, but I was thriving, so whatever. I survived. The night it all went down was the night I was flopping from midnight's life to the normal human sleep schedule, so I had been awake for almost 24 hours by 8 p.m. Myself, my BF, Amy, Amy's BF, Steve, and our mutual friend were all gathering at our place for some drinks. When Steve arrived, he took Amy so they could get a top-up of booze before we cracked anything open. They said they'd be 30 minutes tops and asked us to wait. 40 minutes went by. I texted to see how far off they were. The answer I got was vague. Whatever. Amy is weird like that sometimes. I texted again at an hour. Then 15 minutes after that, another text at an hour and a half. Always vague responses without any real information. I was getting frustrated. Again, we weren't going to start drinking until they got back. They knew this. And more importantly, Amy knew that if I didn't get some booze in me, by 9:30, I'd be down for the count. I made sure to remind her of this several times. The booze was what was going to keep me conscious for the night. I'd have started drinking without her if she'd told me she was going to be a while, but she didn't tell me what was happening or give any indication of a time frame, even when I'd specifically asked. We just sat around miffed, thinking Amy and Steve were right around the corner, to be back any moment. When they finally came back through the door over 2 hours later, they had Steve's dog as a surprise. I don't remember what I said, but I yelled. I was furious at how inconsiderate of a decision that was, and my tired state didn't help with my emotional regulation. I mean, sure, get the dog, but tell us you'll be a bit and that we should start drinking without you, not that you'll be right back and to just wait. After the hour mark, I honestly only stayed awake to rip her a new one. She did not understand why I was so mad. We argued briefly before I just went to bed, but the argument continued the next day. During that bit, she threatened that if I left, she'd never let me see her daughter again. That was it. That was it. Decision made. I won't let you use your daughter like that with me, and I won't subject myself to that sort of manipulation. I started re-examining her past behavior as I packed and realized Amy was never a good person. She was always cruel and rude whenever the opportunity would present itself, no matter who she was speaking to. Once, at a mutual friend's birthday party, she directly told the birthday girl, who was a large woman, that she should never lose weight because then she'd be prettier than her. Similarly, she seemed very frustrated when I went through an insane fitness shape and was suddenly in better shape than her. Amy never helped with my depression or grief like I'd convinced myself she did. In fact, she pretty much flat out ignored it. Even when I told her I was having thoughts, Amy was a bully. Meaner than Regina George kind of bully. It wasn't the first time she showed her true colors, but it was the first time I could consciously see her for who she was. With all that, and a million other consistently toxic and selfish memories ranging from childhood to adulthood, I moved out within the next 48 hours. But here's where I become the jerk of this story. I took something that was technically not mine. It was something I'd gifted her a month before for Christmas. You see, I bought a really nice, really considerate and expensive gift for my loving, caring cousin who supported me through many trying times in my life. But while re-examining everything on that last day, I realized that Amy had none of those qualities. She wasn't nice, she was mean. She wasn't considerate, she was self-absorbed, and she was about as supportive as damp cardboard. The woman I thought Amy was never existed in the first place. Since my gift was for someone who apparently didn't exist, I took it with me. I know that it 5,000% makes me a jerk, and I don't think I'd make the same choices were I able to do it over. But I still don't regret taking that $1,000 couch with me. It's still in my living room a decade later. Not sorry. Edit to add. Since this has popped up a few times, she took me in because she needed a roommate and help with childcare. I took her up on it for some company to distract from my grief. We agreed to split bills 40-60 since I was going to help with childcare. Found out that I was the one paying closer to 60% when I asked her what 50% would be for my last month. She gets no points for taking me in. This is a pretty recent story for me that finally had its conclusion a couple weeks ago. Someone told me to post here, so I figured why not. One more thing before I get all into it. Every story has a silver lining, and this is mine. It doesn't take away from the fact, though, that it was caused by much worse circumstances that no one should have to go through, and anyone who's been through the same as I have can attest to it. If anyone out there right now is going through domestic violence or emotional abuse, I urge you to contact the authorities and am myself always available to chat as well, if you need advice or such. Anyway, all this started a couple months ago with an incident between my parents. It's important to note I still live with them, but have been working and providing for myself since graduating in the summer and am fully self-sufficient. My father has always been an abusive person, albeit one that did support his family at the time, but due to his lack of self-control and outbreaks. The situation was more often tense than not, especially between me and him as the power began to shift, and I stopped relying on him. So yeah, a couple months ago, an abusive incident between him and my mother occurred, which started my mother's silent treatment of him for about 2 weeks. When he decided to get physical again, this time against me, which resulted in a bigger fight, and in the process my younger sister's shoulder getting hurt, mother breaking her nose, and me calling the cops. He was arrested that day and had a restraining order filed against him for 10 days. All temporary, as the police over here in Switzerland tends to avoid stepping in more than necessary, and did this for our protection while leaving us to make further decisions. An important thing to note is that my mother has always been a stay-at-home mom, especially since my sister is still underage, and she doesn't have a formal education to make much money in this country. So for her, divorce was more something like a last resort, and she attempted to try and get family counseling couples therapy set up, which didn't turn out so well, at which point we got her a lawyer and began the proceedings. I also studied law myself to an extent before going into my current field. So a lot of what happened here I was well equipped for, which did make things easier. This is where the money part starts. Our family has been pretty well off ever since I can remember. So my sister and I both have had somewhere in the ballpark of $150,000, each saved up for our schooling, first cars, etc. Half of this money was put into accounts in our name while our parents could still access them. The money was legally ours. The other half was put into accounts in our grandparents' names in the U.S. for logistical reasons. The day of the first court hearings, I was in the process of transferring said account fully into my name, as I was expecting something like what did end up happening to happen. Later, when the transfer succeeded, I found out almost all the money, up to a fairly round number, was transferred to my father's locked pension plan. This was a surprise to me. As to my knowledge until then, only my mother was supposed to have direct access to it, while my father would have had to have the bank card, which I knew was with us. So after some checking, I found out my mother wasn't fully aware of when she had signed forms that gave him access, but more on that later. As I was now down on a big chunk of money, part of it was my literal income I had been saving. It was time to get my own lawyer. In addition to this transfer, back when we were building our house, my father took a loan from my account, which was understood to be a mutual agreement, and he should pay me back at a given time. Knowing a little about how his lawyer operated, the amount of offenses he potentially had to his name, and the fact that my mother and sister were now open to pressing charges against him, if it came to it, I had a feeling that this would end up in an out-of-court agreement. I set up a meeting with my lawyer and collected as much evidence as possible regarding the transactions and ownership of the account. While my father did have the legal papers to manage my account in Switzerland, that means any action is meant to be taken in my best interest. His pension plan doesn't concern me, so any reasonable judge would rule in my favor. Additionally, my mother's lawyer became aware of the situation, as she legally represented my sister as well, who lost a similar amount of money due to the same thing. Before I even met my lawyer, he and my mother's lawyer discussed the situation and managed to create a good picture of it. So finally, the first meeting, I discussed the situation with my lawyer. As my father assaulted me, I had the options to press charges, as well as requests for damages made and possibly sue him for the money. But to this day, it's hard for me to say if I'd have managed to get all of it back with that method, as courts would have trouble recognizing his debt to me from the house loan, and not to mention the insane costs involved with starting a legal case against someone in your own family. Knowing my father, I also knew that he wouldn't shy from spending thousands of dollars to protect himself in court with better lawyers, which was exactly why my lawyer figured it'd be better to come to a settlement, as I certainly had more I could use against my father than vice versa. With the only difference being that this way, I might get a lot more out of it than the money he only just took recently. At this point, I'd like to note that my grandparents had officially cut myself, my mother, and my sister out because they didn't agree with the decision for us to stay away from my father. They insisted on the need for family therapy, whereas we had already decided there was no point, and my mother was divorcing him while I decided to get a lawyer and fight for myself. My father also managed to allegate that I had hit him on the day of the incident, which was another reason for me to make sure that no one could claim I accepted that statement for the obvious lie it was. Since my grandparents cut me out, I could say goodbye to that half of the money already. No way to sue for it, nor was I legally entitled to it, so the bank couldn't do much. This is where it gets interesting, though. My lawyer created a whole list of things we could use against my father, ranging from the recent incident to cases from the past that I had written up when this all started, as well as using statements from my old teachers and my therapist to create the skeleton for a case that would certainly get expensive. The whole point of this was to have a solid foundation on which we could then approach my father's attorney and suggest a settlement for the money taken out of my account recently, as well as him returning the loan for the house. He was hesitant at first, and even suggested to my mother that she and him would together pay off a small part of it over time as a compromise, but that clearly wasn't an option for me. After hearing this, I contacted my lawyer once again and had him double down on our very specific demands, that we wanted to come to an agreement for $50,000. In exchange, I would drop the charges and leave him alone. This also meant in return he would have to let go of the claims that I hit him, essentially closing the case for both parties. There was also a deadline for me to continue with the case, leaving him 3 more days to consider it. Luckily, the whole thing seemed to be a game of chicken, with him waiting until the night before the deadline to finally agree to our request. His lawyer contacted us and eventually wrote an email saying that they agreed with the request and would be glad to sign a contract on the matter, making it up to my lawyer now to write up the contract and end the whole deal. A funny part about this whole exchange was my father's statements that were part of the email to us, claiming that they had just as much of a case against me and could press charges if they so pleased, listing a bunch of things I had allegedly done that would warrant a countersuit. In the end, seeing that they agreed to pay me all that money, I'm quite sure those statements were just to show that they weren't afraid more than anything else, really. Since if they truly believed the allegations, they would have just proceeded with the case. Now, a couple days later, I received the transaction for all the money that we agreed on, and the case is officially over for me. The irony of it all is my grandparents cut me out and probably encouraged my father to do what he did regarding the last money I had left to my name. In the end, all the money that was in the U.S. was the money my father used to pay me back, since the pension plan he paid the money into was locked, and he had no other quick financial means to reach the settlement. So a big chunk of money went down the drain on lawyers, and most of the money saved for me ended up with me. The part that landed in the pension plan even came with its own benefits. As my parents are still married, my mother gets 50% of it in the divorce. All of this did come at a cost, though, which is why the first thing I said in this post is the most important to me. My mental health has suffered a lot from all this, and I've never been so burnt out. Not only that, I need more psychiatric attention than ever, and my relationship with my father's side of the family is forever ruined. So while that last part was necessary, they were toxic, manipulative, and abusive, and picking his side after all the incidents they knew about, and also knowing that there were more they didn't know about. The mental toll these things take on a person can affect your entire life, which is why I once again want to stress that if anyone out there is going through anything remotely similar, to please reach out to people you can trust, contact the authorities or something like that. You don't need to be stuck in that situation for as long as I was, which is a whole another story.